whoever and wherever you are.
You're listening to We Hate Small Talk
With Cindy
and Yimin. Welcome back to another episode of We Hate Small Talk. Today, we are talking about something very spicy. Today, we're going to be talking about fake friends.
Listeners, did you know that today there is a third participant in our call? And I am going to introduce a very good friend of the podcast, Cara.
Hi everyone, my name is Cara. Very happy and honored to be here with my mother.
So Cara is basically like my child, and we've known each other for maybe 4 years now almost. Yeah, I knew her right as she came into university, all bright-eyed and shiny, and we've been friends for a very long time, and we thought we would bring her here today because Cara is a fake friend connoisseur. She has some dirty deeds to share with y'all.
Well, honestly, to begin with, I also don't have many friends, but yeah, also some spicy stories here and there.
Yeah, so I guess we can get started right away. And to kind of lay the foundation, I want to know what types of friends you guys have in your lives, as well as kind of like how you met them. Why don't you start, Yimin?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cindy. So I feel like for me, most of the friends that I have are either from childhood, like we grew up together, we went to the same kind of school, or like we were family friends and then I just became friends with them because I saw them a lot at like gatherings. So that's the first kind. And then the second kind is from university. So I feel like the majority of my close friends are probably met through university. And then lastly, there's like a very small portion of my friends who I met from like very random occurrences. So like either volunteering with them or like I went to this nerd camp called Shad, so I have a couple friends from there that I still actually keep in touch with today. So I would say that like mainly encompasses who I'm friends with. How about you, Cara?
I also went to the same nerd camp, but I, unlike you, did not retain much contact from Shad, unfortunately. Also because I went in grade 10 instead of grade 11, so everyone was older kind of, and they went to university and stopped keeping contact. But anyways, going back to the point, yeah, I think majority of my limited number of friends also come from school, whether if it's like elementary school or like middle school or high school or university. So that's definitely where I met most of my friends, and then the other portion will probably just be like very random, either friends of friends or sometimes through work or social media, as cringy as it is, a very, our generation. But yeah, I think that's where I meet most of my friends. How about you, Cindy?
Yeah, I forgot to mention in my introduction that Cara is actually a social media influencer.
No, please.
So we will have her handle in either the description of this episode or on our Instagram. Follow us at We Hate Small Talk. But yeah, check her out. And
I always thought you were some sort of social media influencer for real because your Facebook profile pictures are so nice. They're so nice. And so I thought like you were actually sort of influencer.
This is so cringy. Every time Cindy like brings up this point with like one of our other friends, I'm like, please stop killing me. It's really just because the reason is like one of my high school friends, going back to the topic of friends, who I'm no longer friends with, T. But he started like getting into photography in high school, and he felt too shy asking random strangers to model. And then so he asked me to just stand in places, and he would take portraits. And then he would get an Instagram page going, and then he would like start posting them in order to get other models. And then eventually like other photographers would be like, oh, like, do you model? Like, do you want to like come out for a shoot or like take pictures? I'm like, sure. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll just stand there. But that's why I have nice photos. But yeah, not an influencer of any sort.
But you should be.
No, she's a triple threat. Cara's a triple threat. She models, she acts, and she influences. Fuck yeah.
I feel like this is Cindy as a mom, like actually like trying to like make her child do all these things, and the child's just like, stop, mom, I just like have fun.
Yeah, honestly, this is why I don't want to have children, because I feel like I put Cara under insane amounts of duress. on a day-to-day basis. And just embarrassment. Like, before she just, melts into a puddle out of embarrassment, I'm going to say where I get my friends from. All basically 5 of my friends that I can count on one hand. And, I do have very few friends, and I think that's something that I prefer, but I have one really good childhood friend. We've known each other since we were like babies, so like that shit's for life. And then I have friends that I categorize by interest and by convenience. So I feel like by interest, we've either met through like a club or an extracurricular activity where we had something that we really bonded over. And spoiler alert, that's how I met Kara. And then I have friends by convenience where it's either not you. Yimin, you're by interest too. We were in the same major, we were in the same classes, but I feel like for convenience, it's just like either high school friends that you just like have to be friends with because you're together for all the same courses, or friends of friends that you meet in university to kind of expand your social circle. And I put kind of work friends that you barely contact or acquaintances in this kind of category as well. But interesting that we have all kind of similar categorizations for this. But I guess, like, as I mentioned, there's a slight difference between what a friend is and what an acquaintance might be. And I kind of want to see how you define that line.
Yeah, I guess I can go first for like how I would define the difference between a real friend and then just someone that I will say hi to and be friendly with, but not really tell them things. I think for me, the number one quality that I value in any friendship is trust. And I think there's a lot of factors that play into how much you can trust someone. Like sometimes it's automatic and there's just something about that person that gives you that instinct in your gut that you're like, I can trust this person. Sometimes the trust is built over time. And if you're like friends with them for a longer period of time, you build that trust slowly. And so I feel like I have both of those kinds of friends, but like nevertheless, I have to trust them to keep what I tell them in confidentiality, or just like trust them enough to open up to them. And that's like what I really, really value. And if I can trust them, that means that they're a real friend. And then I think like the second thing that's very important to me is the ability to learn from them in some sort of way. And I know that sounds very cost benefit analysis or like very calculative, but I mean it more in a sense where like if I'm talking to them, I feel like the conversation is like very engaging and I can like gain from our friendship. I don't know, like that actually sounds very calculative. So maybe there's a better way to put it, but it's like I'm growing with this person, not them like pulling me back or keeping me stagnant.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's not really calculative though. I feel like it should be like your friend should be someone that is like lifting you up and you guys are improving together, or otherwise like it might not be a pretty healthy relationship in general. So I feel like it's what it should be like. And I think for me, like definitely honesty and like trust is a big one, but I think like a broad umbrella that I was thinking of is just someone who has your best interest at heart. So that like would include things like loyalty, honesty, empathy, because I think like for me, like it's like, yes, like my friends have flaws, like everyone is selfish to some extent, and that's completely okay. But as a friend, because I am like that, like I would always have my friends' best interest at heart. And you know, that doesn't just mean that, for example, like every time they come to you for advice, you have to be super verbally supportive, but you're thinking about like, okay, what is best for them. So I think like for me, that's kind of like the differentiation between like a true friend and like an acquaintance or like a fake friend.
Okay.
What about you, Cindy?
Yeah, I have to agree with both of yours. I think like both of you covered what I have as well. Like I put loyalty as number one, but I don't mean that in like the sense of like blind allegiance. Like I will always support you no matter what. It's kind of, like
Yes, supreme leader.
yeah, like I kind of not expect that, in the selfish way, you're only friends with me and no one else. But it's like I expect you to be able to be there if I need you for something, or like just that we kind of have that sense of you're my person, you're my ride or die, like that type of feel. And maybe I'm a bit more like stringent when it comes to who my real friends are. So I have a lot of expectations because I have so few friends. Like And I think next is definitely honesty. Like, I want all of my friends to be able to tell me like it is. Like, you know that thing, it's like, should your friend point out if you have like something stuck in your teeth or something like that? Even as simple as that. Like, if you're a friend of mine, like, I wouldn't be angry or annoyed if you did that. I'd be like, holy shit, thank you for stopping me from embarrassing myself. And I really value that. And then lastly, I put something down called I want something shiny in my friends. And like this seems kind of like almost materialistic, but it's along the same lines as what Yimin said. Like I want something to be there that I really like see as their greatest strength or something that is really valuable about them. And this can differ according to the person. Like for example, for Yimin, her grit and hustle is something I admire a lot in her, and that's one of the qualities that I love. And she's looking so uncomfortable and I love it. And Kara's sense of like empathy and the fact that she's like willing to like support and do a lot for all of her friends is something that I really, really love about her as well. And you know, oh my god, this just turned into like a love fest for my friends and I'm crying. No, but yeah, like I always see something super shiny and like just beautiful about each of my friends. And yeah.
You're like a magpie. Sorry.
More like a raccoon. Like I'll just go for the shiny things.
I want to like also piggyback off of the loyalty and the honesty pieces because I really actually agree with that. Like I want someone to like tell me the brutal truth, even if it's hard for me to hear, because if my friends can't even do that for me, like who will? And even though sometimes I feel like I have good self-awareness, sometimes my self-awareness is like so bad and I need them to like tell me what actually is going on. And then for the loyalty piece, it was interesting. I was listening to another podcast actually, and they were talking about loyalty in friendships, especially when it comes to like guys. And if your friends break up with their boyfriend, like will you still be friends with your friend's exes? Or like will you like your friend's exes photos on Instagram, all of that? And I feel like I am such a loyal person where I will not even like that friend's photos at all or like watch their stories anymore if my friend broke up with that guy, because it's like that guy isn't in my friend's life, so why should that guy be in my life? And for some friends, if I actually don't like the guy, I will straight up just unfollow the guy because I feel like I value loyalty so much. And I think that that's just one example of how you can show your loyalty to your friends. But yeah, loyalty is super important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I operate kind of on like a 3 strikes rule anyways. Like I kind of don't immediately like define if this person's loyal or not, but I see based on their actions and like what they do. Like Kara said, do they have my best interests at heart? Like what are they doing to maintain this friendship on their side? And then I kind of give them the judgment in a sense. But I think I really wanted to talk about this topic because now I want to see if we stack up against each other's preferred qualities. And I already said that, you know, I think both of you have my something shiny. I think both of you are very honest. Like both of you will just call me out if I'm being stupid or like, you know, say it in a kinder. Kara says it in a nicer way than Yimin does because Yimin will just be like, what the fuck? Or like she'll be like, I don't understand. Like, what? And I appreciate that. I do. So I think that's good. And then loyalty, yeah. Like I feel like both of you are very loyal to me. And like in the sense that like if I reach out, like you guys are always there, and even if we don't talk for a while, we'll pick things up, and like I can always count on you guys to be there if I'm in need or if I'm just like thinking about something.
Yeah, and I feel like I can say the same for like I know Kara, we're not that close. I think we only started becoming friends when we talked on Clubhouse.
Yes.
But that's very important, and I think that like someone who is down to like just talk about random shit so openly and like being honest on the first conversation, that's like so good for me. And yeah, with Cindy, I think you hit all the points for like being a loyal friend, being honest to me. Like I feel like you push me to be like a better person, because I remember last year when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do you for my free time. Like you pushed me to like apply to jobs, and not only just random jobs, but like you pushed me to do something that I like would never have gone for. She said to apply to finance jobs. Essentially, yeah, like I feel like you forcing me to do like Harvard online classes with you and like do paint nights with you, like those are all things that I would never do on my own by myself. So like I really appreciate that. And then also just like the trustworthy piece, like I do trust you, so perfect recipe for a friendship.
Oh my god, it's like I was created out of that list you have. What?
But we were not always this way, okay? We definitely
Yeah.
grew into this.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think like if you were here from the first episode, you're a real one, and you know that Yimin and I gave each other our first impressions and we didn't think we'd be friends. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Kara, share yours.
I definitely think, because like mine was just like such a broad umbrella, but I think like same thing, even like since we don't know each other that well, but honestly from the interactions that we've had on Clubhouse, and just for background, because we had these like random rooms where like we just talk about really random and sometimes very deep conversations, and topics would just pop up. And I think like even just from those conversations, I just like really enjoyed like the depth of our conversations. And then even just like from hearing things from Cindy, I can already tell that like, you know, if you can tolerate Cindy and, you know, stick around for like all this time, and you know, it's a really big sign. I'm joking, but yeah. And then Cindy, of course, like honestly, it's interesting that you guys brought up the first impression, because I think based on first impression, I also didn't think Cindy and I would become friends. It's because like we were thinking about it, like back in first year, we were both like, we're coming in like strong personalities, like the dyed hair, you know, like I was like, yeah, like, ooh, like doesn't seem like someone that would be like a super softie. So I was like, ooh, maybe not. But I think like as time went on, I started to see a lot more similarities between us. And then I was like very much surprised. And then yeah, like I'm very, very happy that like we are as close as we are today. And you definitely are someone that meet my umbrella of like having friends best interests at heart, like 100%. Yeah, you will definitely tell me things as it is, and very caring person overall. So thank you.
Oh my god, I've never
Softie at heart.
I've never gotten the word caring from anyone ever. But yeah, I think like Kara and I are both Leos, and we're both kind of chaotic, and so that type of energy usually, like, you know, similar things repel each other, and that's what I felt like. I was like, oh, this girl's kind of like me, but last year. And it was really interesting. And afterwards, I saw how much of a softie she actually is. Like, you know those lava cakes where it's like outside it looks like a real cake, but inside you cut it open and it's just liquid pouring out. It's just liquid chocolate. That's kind of what she's like. Because like on the outside, she looks fierce as fuck. Like you'll see her on the street and you're like, ooh, that girl would like whoop my ass. But then you actually talk to her and you're like, she's tofu. Like, bro, I could break her.
Yo, that's actually very interesting to know, because I don't know you that well, I would have never really thought that. Like I would think that you're like pretty like a Leo, like, you know, fire in you, fire burning strong. And I feel like because I'm also a fire sign, like we would all get along really well. But I feel like people think I'm a softie from how I look, but I don't think I'm that soft. So
No, you sharp as fuck, human. You a razor.
it's like I'm like a teddy bear, but then when you open it up, you find like a bomb. I'm kidding. Just kidding.
Surprise! Oh my gosh. Okay, this kind of derailed really quickly. But now that we know what a real friend is, and that, you know, we match each other's, you know, specs, and like we're all friends here, what do you think makes a fake friend? And this is really interesting because I don't know if you guys are as, you know, strict about this definition as I am. Or maybe I'm less strict.
I guess like I can go first because I feel like I'm pretty loose with this definition and broad. And I really only started to clearly distinguish who my fake friends are versus my real friends during quarantine. Like before then, I wouldn't even have thought like, oh, this person's a fake friend, because I was so willing to just be friends with anyone. Like I feel like I'm the opposite of Cindy, where my threshold for friendships aren't that high. Like I'll put you on my close friends list on Instagram if I feel like we get along, you know? And so during quarantine, when everything got shut down back in March last year, and you really only had to put an effort to talk to people, I started to realize who was putting an effort to reach out to me and who wasn't. And I also realized like who I wanted to reach out to versus who I didn't really care that much to talk to. And it showed me like it showed me like people's true colors, and I was more aware of like how people thought of me in their friend circles. Because if I wanted to reach out to someone or have a chat with them and then they didn't feel the same towards me, then it's like, oh, like you actually don't value me as much as I value you. And I wouldn't say that that makes them a fake friend, but it kind of realigned my expectations for the friendship and made me aware that perhaps like this person isn't as close as a friend as I had initially thought they were, which is okay. Like I don't think it's like their fault, but I think like for me, I sometimes tend to get excited when I make friends and I like think that they're super close, and then I realize like perhaps they didn't think the same way. So I think for me, like the only quality that would define a fake friend is like when I put in more time into the friendship significantly, or when I value the friendship significantly more than they do, and then I'm like, okay, like you're probably just a fake friend.
I think I almost agree like 100% with that. Not to just completely like repeat what you have said, but I'm kind of more similar to Cindy in that I also have a pretty low threshold for actual friends, which is why like I haven't really had like a fake friend in like probably I don't even know like close to a decade. Because like I think like way earlier in high school I just very much like shrunk the circle to like the people who I think value me the same way, which I later found out I was wrong. But yeah, so I also think like it's just a fine line between like there's a difference between fake friends and acquaintances, right? Because an acquaintance, you know that like both of you guys are kind of seeing the relationship as a relatively shallow level, but a fake friend is someone, like you said, you think that there is more to it and that it is you care more about this person and that you consider more of their feelings and you have more of their best interests at heart, but then it is not reciprocated. And I think that's when it really stings a little bit, and then you realize like, ooh, this is not what I expected and it's not as genuine of a relationship. So yeah, I think that's how I would also define fake friends, and thankfully don't have many of those because don't have many friends in general.
Yeah, just to echo on that thought, out of all of my 5 friends that I have, I don't think anyone's a fake friend. So, doing pretty good. 5 for 5, like good friends, not a bad bean in the basket. So I think my definition is probably a little different because I think there's a difference between fake friends and acquaintances, but also fake friends versus just bad friends, like people who aren't a good friend. Like they're still a friend, they just don't know how to be a really great one. They're trying to level up, but we'll see. But my definition is more like very based on one thing, just like genuine and honesty. If they can't be their true selves around you, and or you can't be your true self around them, then that's what I would consider a fake friend. Like if you feel like it's necessary to either conceal a part of yourself or to not share everything about yourself. And on the flip side, if they feel like, or if you feel like they're not showing you everything about themselves, then I don't really consider that like a real true friend.
That's interesting because I feel like I wouldn't say like my friend circle is only like 5. And the reason why is because I have a lower threshold for letting people be my friends and like just asking them how they're doing and all of that, or like staying in touch throughout COVID. But I would say like my close inner circle of like close friends is 5 or less, right? And those are the people that I like can be my true self with. But with all my like just normal friends, like I still feel like I'm not 100% like my true self, or I wouldn't say like every single thing that comes to mind. Like, does that make me fake then?
Yeah, you're just a fake bitch, yimin. No, like I think definitely there's people that you choose to like, like this is your friend that you always party with, or like this is the friend that you always talk about deep shit with, and like there's like different facets of friendships. But this is also like a clear difference between like the fact that you have a high social battery and like you can maintain versus like I only have 5 friends because that is the maximum I can do. Like
Yeah. And I don't think that necessarily like just because you're more social and you have more like friends that you keep up with that you're necessarily more fake just because you're like less quote unquote genuine with them. Because I kind of think of a fake friend as someone who, for example, is more social, but let's say they are friends with someone, they hang out with them, but on the flip side, they actually dislike that person or they dislike interacting with them, but they still keep up that friendship. That to me is slightly more on the fake friend side, right? Like that's kind of how like where all like the backstabbing and like being like fake and flowery comes in.
That is honestly my worst nightmare. Like, I sometimes question if people hang out, like, not like now, obviously, because like COVID, like, I feel like people only put in effort to people they care about. But like before, especially at Ivy, honestly, I would question like if I was hanging out with them and they like actually liked me as a person, or they were just hanging out with me because we were affiliated in the same club or in the same section or something like that, and they actually didn't like me as a person. And I feel like that has definitely happened. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's just I've never found out about it.
Some people are really good at hiding it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but now that we've kind of defined what a fake friend is, I think a lot of people throw this term around too. Like, they'll call people toxic friends. Do you think there's a difference between like a fake friend and a toxic friend?
Definitely. Because I think, like, for example, like a fake friend, like they know that they don't care about you. Like deep down, they are aware that they are being fake to you most of the time, and they know that they don't value you the same way. But a toxic friend might be different in that, like, they think that the friendship is genuine and they think that they are invested in the relationship, but they are just terrible friends. And because they're not self aware, they are more self centered, or like they just don't see what's happening. And, like they might be taking advantage of you in ways that they don't realize, but that does not excuse how toxic they are. So I think there's definitely a difference.
I agree 100%. Like, I think the most difficult thing about toxic friends is that they truly believe that they are doing the best for you, and they think that they have your best interests at heart, but they'll pull some shit where they're coming at it from a very like, oh, but I want the best for you angle, but in reality, they're hurting you, right? And that's the most difficult part, because at least for a fake friend, they're real in the fact that they just don't give a shit and they don't care about you. So I think my definition here is that not all fake friends are toxic, but also not all toxic friends are fake, and there's overlap of the two. Like, there's fake toxic friends, but that's very scientific of a definition.
I feel like I have more experiences with fake friends than I have with toxic friends. I feel like if I find someone to be toxic, I just won't talk to them anymore. And maybe I've been lucky and I haven't had a close toxic friend that I haven't had to deal with that. Like, have you guys had to experience that, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think another thing is that oftentimes when you're in the deep end, you don't realize that that friend is toxic. Like, you genuinely think that it's a good friendship. Oh, they might be a little overbearing or something, or they might say the wrong thing, but they're still like, they still care about me. And that's really hard because you don't realize you're in a toxic relationship. And this is the same way with friends or significant others. Like, you often almost lie to yourself because you're like, oh, but they're such a great friend, right? And I've definitely had this experience where I had a pretty close friend a couple of years ago that, I considered someone I'd share a lot of my secrets with, or a lot of my like deepest, darkest like thoughts, and like a lot of things I was confused about. And they would offer me advice too, and I think they thought they were doing the best for me, but then they would hit me with a lot of comments that made me feel really shitty about myself. And they would almost try to help, but end up turning it around and not gaslighting me, but in a way making it feel like I was the root of my own problems all the time. And I was just really sad and really, really not in a great spot, but I didn't realize it was because of the person and like their tactics. I thought it was just me. And it wasn't until like meeting other people and realizing how friendships are supposed to be like that I was like, oh shit, oh no, I have realized suddenly that, this person is not who I thought they were.
Yeah. I think like going off of what you were saying about, not realizing because you're in the deep end. And the similarities between like friendships and romantic relationships. Like there is a line from a show I really like called BoJack, and I don't know, the line just like sticks with me for a very long time, but it says like, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. And I think it's just very relatable because that's what it feels like in these relationships is that you have already reached a point where you saw all the good qualities in them and you started to care about them and you think that there's something genuine, that all of the little quote unquote toxic traits you think, like are just like their flaws, or like they are just like one incident that doesn't define who they are. And so you tend to be more forgiving. And then so by the time that you realize that this person might be toxic, it might be a little bit like not too late, but like it's harder to cut off that relationship. And so I'm really glad that Yimin hasn't experienced too much of that. But yeah, I definitely have my fair share. And I think it's interesting because I think my experience is almost the flip side of Cindy's, where the person didn't like make me feel bad per se. Like actually it was the opposite. They always made me feel like really happy whenever I hung out with them, whenever we had conversations. It was always a good time. And we've been friends for like, I think like 5, 6 years, and it was during high school. So, one of the most transitional like time of your lives. We were coming into university, lots of hard times, and we went through like lots of obstacles and challenges in life together. That's another thing, which made it really hard to then pick out those traits and characteristics to be like, oh, now I'm gonna cut you off. But what I realized was that this person did not have my best interests at heart, and sometimes they were behind my back that I discovered, but sometimes it was like, even things that in front of me that like he would say or do that I realized, this kind of shows that you don't care about me, or that you haven't taken the time to consider things from my perspective, which is fine. Not everyone can do that all the time, but if I am able to do that for you all these years, why can't you reciprocate? And I think it definitely took me a very, very, very long time to come to terms with that and be honest with myself. But yeah, so it was the flip side of Cindy's case where, like it was not like they were trying to gaslight me or make me feel really bad, but it was the opposite, which made it even harder to kind of realize that they were toxic.
While you guys are talking, I'm like going through the list of my friends or like my previous friendships and thinking, wait, which ones were toxic? I can't even tell. Because you're right, like when you have rose colored glasses on, it's so hard to tell the red flags. And especially for a friendship, like friendships and relationships, I think the one difference is when you're in a relationship, like you're so close with that person and you share so much and you're so vulnerable with them that it's almost easier to tell if there are red flags down the line. But like if you have like so many friends, like, and you don't give like my entire self to like one person, and sometimes I feel like I do spread myself kind of thin, that even if someone's toxic, like maybe it's not affecting me as much because I'm also like not realizing it.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think friendships, you're also like, oh, the stakes are not as high where like, you're not like marrying this person in the future. So like you might be less like attentive to like the smaller things that are happening all over the place. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I feel like we've mentioned, like when you're lost in the sauce per se, and sometimes you're just swimming, and this was how stupid I was. I was like, I saw these kind of toxic traits and I was like, oh, it's just their personality, or like, oh, they're just that way. It's just that quirky thing about them that they do. And
Yeah.
I think like it's really hard to differentiate between, like you said, their flaws, or everyone has them, versus if it's like an uber like red flag. And how do you think you do that, Kara?
I think it comes down to if it hurts you, because like a person can have, like I have many flaws, right? Like I don't know, like I'm not gonna start naming them because there are countless. And but I think like a red flag is if it starts to affect you. I think that's where you need to stop and ask like what's happening. Is this like a pattern like behavior like that hurts me or negatively influences me in one way or the other? That's probably when it gets a little bit more serious. And I think I was definitely the same, where like the person. I saw a lot of traits where I was like, oh, like that's just who they are. Like they've always been like this. Like that's completely fine. And then I realized like, ooh, hey, I don't think that's okay. Like, to do something like that. Like I've had cases where, someone literally who I consider my closest friend, who I told everything to, would go behind me and then say certain things about me to someone that they had just met for like maybe a couple of months. And then when I heard that, I was like, that's okay. Like I literally justified it on their behalf and that like, like maybe I am a little like bitchy sometimes, or like maybe I am like this way sometimes. Like I was hurt, but I was also like trying to justify their actions. And then I later realized, hey, but I would never do that to you. So I think like that's where you kind of draw the line where it's like, ooh, like this behavior, like is it hurting me? And would it be something that I would do to the other person, and would that be acceptable? So I think that's how I kind of try to differentiate.
I really like the I would never do that to you analogy, because I feel like that it makes it easy and like for you to differentiate like what is toxic versus what isn't. Like I feel like I've applied that with my friendships, especially how to tell like if someone is putting in effort or not. Like I ask myself like if I was on their end, like would I be doing this or making this excuse, or would I actually put in the time to like call you? And if my answer is different from what their actions are, then I kind of reevaluate how I think about this person.
Yeah, and I think a key thing for me as well is that if you see them not treating other people the same way that they treat you, or if stories from other people differ a lot from the person that you see or know. If there's like a huge discrepancy like that, then it's like, oh, is it just me? Like, are they just treating me this way? And maybe, they reserved all of their quirky traits for me. And it's hard to do that because I think a lot of toxic or fake people that I've encountered are different in the way that toxic people oftentimes reserve their toxic traits for specific people. They don't just show it to everyone, but fake friends are just fake all around. Like they will just smile and laugh with everyone, and that's why they're harder to find, because you never really know what their true self is, right?
Yeah, like even now I have some friends where I don't know if they're fake or not, which scares me sometimes. But yeah, like it's so hard to distinguish like if they actually think of me as like a real friend or if they're like being fake with me and they have to like keep up that appearance because we are like still in each other's lives.
Yeah, so after this episode, Yimin's gonna go scroll through her friends list and check off everyone. It's like, is this person fake?
Purge.
Yeah, like, wait, how about this person? What have they done to me? Have they done anything for me?
But it also like makes me reevaluate how I am as a friend. Like I would never want someone to question if I'm being fake to them. If I actually like truly value them as a friend, I want them to know that I value them as a friend. So then I'm questioning like, do I do enough to let them know?
Yeah, that's definitely really hard because I think when you were talking about like, oh, have I been hurt or have I hurt some? And I was thinking like sometimes subconsciously, like I may hurt my friends and I don't know that I've hurt them unless they tell me. And that's why I also value honesty, because like if I do something to hurt you, if I did something that was not good, like I need you to tell me, because I don't purposefully try to hurt my friends and I try my best to be like a good friend. But oftentimes, like if you're not standing from the outside, if you're not the other person, it's really hard to tell like if this is a good friendship or not.
Yeah. And I think that's where like there's another parallel with like just relationships in general. Like communication is just so important. Like it doesn't really matter how many years that you guys have been friends, like things can always go south, like just from like a tiny little misunderstanding. So yeah, definitely communicate when you're hurt, guys.
On the topic of communication, I would like to bring up communicating with friends and like the frequency in which you communicate with them. Because I have one friend who takes the longest time, or I don't, not even one, like a couple friends who take the longest time to respond to messages. And sometimes they'll like leave me on red and then they'll respond like 2 weeks later. And then at the beginning, that hurt, like that kind of low-key hurt me. And I was like, why am I messaging this person for them to only respond 2 weeks later? And then I see it, so I'll respond right away. And then they'll like take so long to respond. And I think I like brought it up with that person. And this was like early on in the friendship too. And I was like, hey, like this is not okay. But also, like, do you do this with everyone? Because if you do, and this is just who you are as a person, then I can accept that and I'll just lower my expectations for you. And it turns out like that was just who they were as a person. So I was like, okay, like I'm fine with that. As long as I know that, then I will not expect you to respond to me right away. And if you like leave me on red and respond to me a couple weeks later, like I will be fine with it. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'm gonna have to call bullshit on this one because
Yeah.
I feel like as a person, if you're really interested, if you like someone, you would respond right away, or at least whenever you had the mental capacity to do so. I would never leave any of my close friends on fucking red for 2 weeks and just be like, oh, that's just, you know, a personality trait of mine. Being terrible is not a personality trait. You're just being terrible.
I think I kind of agree. Like I do understand that everyone has like obviously like they text very differently, like they have like different preferences. But like for example, like I have a friend who I talk to maybe like once a month. But when you talk like because how do you keep a conversation going if each response takes 2 weeks? Like that's not a conversation. Like how do you even exchange anything? Like I feel like that's kind of and like you said, like Cindy, like if they read it, if you have the time to read it, like a response takes like 2 minutes. So what is happening that you have to push it so far back into your agenda, like into the backlog, that it's coming up like weeks later? Like what's the point of keeping the conversation alive at that point?
Okay, you do make a good point. And I think like I'm guilty of doing this to the people that do this to me. If I only get a response every 2 weeks, then I am very okay with leaving that person on red as well and then responding to them in 2 weeks when I have like a surge of like social battery and I'm like, let me respond to everyone right now. And I feel like with those friends, like how I actually stay in touch with them is like through a phone call, like being like, okay, let's call and actually talk instead of like doing this like back and forth. But no, I actually really do agree with you, Cindy, like on your aggressiveness with this. Like if you're really a close friend, like they'll make time for you. And that's like a very true statement. And I think like I'm kind of bad at responses now, so I have to like be cognizant of doing that as well and being like timely with my responses with my friends because I don't want people to like not think that I value them. So I have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and maybe that's just me because I like I said, I have so few friends. Once again, just to reiterate that like it's just not that hard to keep up a conversation with like one person, right? And I almost think like this is such a low standard that like if I can't even count on you to reply for something so low effort as that, what if I actually needed help? How the hell can I count on you for help, right? If I needed you to drive me to the hospital, or if like there's an accident that's happened and I call you. If I can't even count on you for a message and to keep up a fucking conversation, then like I don't even consider you a friend. And then that would just be like an acquaintance checking in every 2 weeks. They're like a newsletter bi-weekly, like
Oh my god. Yeah. No, you prove a good point. And I think like that's why you have like really solid like 5 friends, right? Whereas like for me, if I had to count my close friends on my fingers, like I don't know, man. Like I don't know. So yeah, like I think this is one of the dangers of like sometimes like being okay with being friends with a lot of people and then just having like okay friends.
Yeah. And like I feel like for me, my close friends, I literally talk to on like almost a daily or every other day basis. Like I will message them.
Yeah.
And even if it's just like, here's a random fucking meme I found, like I just like to keep up with them. And otherwise, like my really close childhood friend, she's not here in Ontario. And so, well, she's still in the same fucking country. What am I saying? So for my close childhood friend, we don't text every day because I know she's busy, but we will schedule calls like every other week or like every month. And when we call, we'll talk for hours. And it's like we didn't spend any time apart at all. And it's like that close, almost like kind of a kinship that we have that makes me realize like maybe frequency isn't the most important determinant in how close your relationship is.
That's what I was just about to bring up. Like I also have that one like childhood friend who I've been friends with since like I was 6, and she is across the world in China. And so we definitely, like I said, like talk like once or twice every month, and it would be through a phone call. And then we would just like catch up and it would be like nothing changed. So definitely I agree. It really depends on like the level of bond and understanding that you guys have of each other, that like you know that both of you guys are very much aware that nothing will change even if you don't communicate that often, versus friends that you probably do need more conversations and communications with. So I guess it depends.
Yeah. And on this topic of like keeping in touch, I think that one thing that's really difficult to experience is that when you stop keeping in touch or when friendships grow apart. And I don't know about you guys, but that has definitely happened and has hurt me a lot in the past, where I'm like, did I do something wrong? Like, is it because of me that we're drifting apart? And I think now I've realized that that's just a part of growing pains. And, sometimes you and your friend, your trajectories will just be different and you'll veer off. And, if you're really good friends or if you actually value each other, you guys will meet again down the line. But, that's another story.
Yeah, I think for me, I also like experienced the friendships growing apart thing, especially the transition from high school to university. So like in high school, I had this best friend that I was best friends with like for at least 5 years, and I thought I was going to grow old with this person. Like she was like my ride or die. And like everyone in our high school knew that we were best friends and we did every single club together. Like we spent all of our free time outside of class together, and we also took almost all the same classes because we both wanted to do business in university, and like we would talk about university apps. Like we just spent so much time together. So yeah, I thought she was my ride or die, but we went to different universities in different provinces. So it wasn't like easy just for us to visit each other. But I think that I started to realize we were growing apart, and I started to realize that I started to value the friendship more than she did when, you schedule calls and then they keep on rescheduling because they're busy, or when you're calling, they're like doing their laundry or like doing something else. And they just like aren't 100% there, right? And that was going on in first year during like the time where I arguably needed a close friend the most in my life. And so that was so hard for me. Like I remember crying a lot because I knew that this friendship was growing apart, but I wanted to cling on to it so bad. And I think that during that first year and into the summer, like there were peaks and lows. Like we would be close and then we would be like kind of not close and close and kind of not close, and it was just like depending on our schedules too. And that kept on happening into like third year, honestly. So like this growing apart phase didn't happen quickly. Like it was like something that happened over a long period of time. And I think honestly, we really realized we grew apart like in the last year of university, because in third year, I would still call her and update her about my life, ask her for advice, and take her advice really seriously. And I think she did the same to me to a certain extent as well. And we still tried to make it work. But then in fourth year, that was when I realized when we talked, I was not interested in what she was talking about, and she also probably wasn't interested in what I was talking about. And so even that connection wasn't there, which is like basic for any friend. So then that was like, honestly, after 4 years, I was like, okay, maybe this is the end of our friendship. And I think now it's come to like, we wish each other happy birthday and that's it. And that went from like my ride or die for 5 years to wishing each other happy birthday in one line. And now I think I've come to peace with it, and I realize like that's it. And like I still think it'd be really nice to attend her wedding and for her to come to my wedding and like still like see all of the developments that we end up going through in life. But I recognize that we have grown apart.
Dude, got a little teary-eyed, not gonna lie. Like losing a friend
Yeah.
and breaking
Yeah.
up with a friend in a sense is like, I feel like way worse than with a significant other, because with
Same here.
my friends, I invest so much of myself and tell them so much that maybe I would even tell my significant other. And especially if they were your ride or die, like that was the person, your confidant, that you could tell everything to, that you would say everything to. And to go from like that relationship to almost being strangers is just so heartbreaking.
I think what Yiming described was just like what I'm really scared of with my current close friends. And it's what I have been terrified of just like over the years of university. And I think like as much as like it hurt, it really does probably just come down to one side not trying enough, or like it shows that they are like at some point they started to care about it less, or that like they found other things. That I think that's really the only, probably like the broader reason why you guys would start to drift, because I think at the end of the day it all comes down to like what you said, like if you want to remain friends with this person, like you would, like both of you guys, if you guys are reciprocating each other's like feelings and efforts, it should in theory continue. Because like that's what I was like terrified with like a lot of my friends, like including those who I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna go to each other's like weddings and stuff like that. And I'm like, my parents are the ones who would always tell me, get used to saying goodbyes. Like when I like moved from China to Canada, like I was very much like clinging on to my friends because that's all I had. And I would like cry every night because like I hated Canada so much at that point. But also I was in PEI, guys. Like, come on, like there was nothing in PEI except really good seafood. But I really cleaned on to the friendships, and I was like, they are my life. And my parents told me that, you know, these goodbyes are just part of life, and you have to get used to letting these people go, and they're gonna move on and you're gonna move on. And I was like, no, like I'm gonna stay friends with some of these people forever. And I did manage to stay friends with some of them all these years, but it's really because like deep down you're like, I want this bad enough, and luckily they did too. So that's probably what it is, and it terrifies me. And I don't know, like just thinking about it like breaks my heart. So I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, I only have 5 people I talk to. If I lose one, that's gonna be a hard blow. Like that's 20% of my portfolio just gone.
Oh my god. This is gonna
Oh
become
my
a
god.
meme. Like, we're actually gonna make a meme out of this because I swear you've said you only have 5 friends 10 times already.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, just thinking about the 5 and whether they will withstand the test of time, I guess. But I think at the end of the day, the people who still try and you're still able to maintain long-term friendships with, these are people who share very similar values with you. And that's why you're able to withstand a lot of changes that are superficial in your life. Because at the end of the day, I feel like a person's true core doesn't change. Like, yes, I'm a very different person than I was 5 years ago, but I think a lot of what makes me who I am still stayed the same. And that's why I can still retain these friendships with people that know me for me.
That's actually super interesting because I reflect back on why that friendship fell apart, kind of. And I always thought it was because we grew apart, because we became such different people in university. Like, I'm someone completely different from 5 years ago. She's someone completely different from 5 years ago. And so our growth patterns, like, just went farther and farther from each other. And so that's why we grew apart. But you're right. Like, at the core, like our values and morals probably still stayed the same. And if that friendship was strong enough to flourish when we had those, then why isn't it flourishing now? Yeah, I think like it comes down a lot to effort. And sometimes like I've realized like people have different levels of effort for friends. I feel like everyone has a social battery or an effort battery or whatever, and some people will put all of their effort into 1 or 2 people who are close to them. And then some people like to spread it out. Like Cindy loves to spread it out between 5 people. I'll spread it out like I don't know how many, like 5 or so people as well. I honestly have never counted my friends, so like I love how there's 5. But yeah, like I think like
Yeah, I keep a daily record when I go to sleep at night, and I just count 1, 2, 3, and I just check that they're all there.
Inventory.
Yeah, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Roll call. Like,
yeah, exactly. So I think like yeah, you're right, Kara, like the effort piece is lacking as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I think like to go off of what Cindy said about like you didn't really change. It's at the core of who you are. I think it's so true because like just a really good example, like the friend who I said was like quote unquote toxic and that we grew apart. Like in high school, for example, we were a trio of friends. So it was like the three of us. Like, you know how you said that your high school friends thought that the two of you guys would stay friends forever. In high school, everyone thought the three of us would stay friends forever and like go to each other's weddings and things like that. But while like two of us stayed friends all of these years and we all went to different universities, two of us stayed friends till this day while the other one drifted apart. And then there was actually like an incident that happened like a couple of weeks ago where and it happened on Clubhouse, where he came back, randomly joined a room that the two of us were in, and we haven't talked in almost 2 years. And he popped into this room and he was drunk and he was talking about what had happened between us, like, you know, and a line that he repeated a lot was, we were just a bunch of like 18-year-olds. Like, what do we know? Like, we all changed so much, right? Like, we changed so much through university. We were just a bunch of kids. What did we know about like staying friends forever? He was basically saying that we were naive and like people change and like all of these things. But it's just so ironic because the two of us didn't change. Like, we stayed friends. Nothing changed between us, right? Like, we didn't become like less close over the years of university. Nothing changed. So it's because of the core of who we were as individuals, not because of like the circumstances or like, you know, maturity or like whatever. No, it's just because of who you are as a person. That's what changed. Or like it's just that we realized later on down the line. So yeah, just an example.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And I think with my friend from childhood, like we have become like not polar opposites, but almost exactly opposite people. And it's scary how very different her life is from mine. Like she's in engineering, she's in the army, like she is just so out of my world of, you know, yappies, right? So it's honestly magic that we still like each other and she still tolerates me. But we will still catch up and we'll still talk about all of these different things that are happening in our lives, and we will still, you know, care for each other. Like we'll still almost like sisters will kind of stay. And like she's one person in my life I'm like, dude, I am, you know, sticking to her side like a thorn until the day we both kaput. Like that is definitely going to happen because we've spent 2 decades together already. Like what's another 4 or 5, right? But I think, you know, I don't know if we'll be friends in years. And I mean, I hope so, but also in a sense, like, regardless if we stay friends or not, we are all crossing our fingers, like, please, the Lord Jesus, if you are up there. But I think, like, at the end of the day, like, you're people I'm willing to put the effort in for. And even if it doesn't work out or we drift apart, like, you're still people I wish, like, the complete best for. And I hope you, like, achieve your dreams. And sometimes that sort of like goodbye or like just well wishes is good enough. Like you can't force everything to remain the same, right? Wow, this got real deep, like the Marianas Trench, man. Like
Wow.
Not to end on
I'm like just taking it in.
yeah, wow, it's like I just like confessed to both of you. Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. But I think this kind of brings us to a kind of like bittersweet ending because we've talked a lot about, you know, why we pick friends and bad friends or fake friends or toxic friends. But at the end of the day, a friend is someone who wishes you well. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode.
Thank you so much, Kara, for being part of our episode. And we really loved hearing the stories that you had to share. So just thank you so much for opening up. And you can follow us on We Hate Small Talk on Instagram.
Thank you guys for having me.
See you guys in the next one. Bye.